Hi, everyone. So, welcome back. Welcome to Tuesday. Yesterday, we talked about the movie 13th, and we talked about prisons in the United States, and that was kind of our way into the war on drugs. Now, we want to think a little more specifically about the history of the war on drugs, spend a little bit more time with its origins in the United States. And the way we're going to do that is by reading this article from Vox about Richard Nixon. How we're going to go about this is we're going to read through, like yesterday, I am going to give you the main idea of this article, and we're going to practice the exact same skill that we did yesterday, the skill of figuring out how we develop a main idea and how we use different supports, different small supports, in order to build a strong platform and a strong argument for our main idea. So let's take a look at this worksheet. All right, so our article is called, "Was Nixon's War on Drugs a Racially Motivated Crusade?" Crusade is an attack based on an ideology. So you might, if you firmly believe that no students should have to wear a uniform ever, and you waged a huge campaign in order to get kids to stop wearing uniforms, that would be a crusade for you. So was Nixon's war on drugs a racially motivated crusade? It's a bit more complicated. So again, using our main idea tools, we can already start to figure out a little bit what this article is about, but we'll come back to that in a second. Let's go back and read the instructions. Read through the following article. In each section, annotate 3 pieces of evidence that help the author support their argument. Then use your annotations to answer the questions below each section. Here we have the overall main idea of the article. So when you're annotating the paragraphs at the bottom, you're going to be figuring out, okay, how does this paragraph support this overall main idea? Okay? So let's look at how I went through this. First, of course, we read. I'll read the first 2 paragraphs just to get us into it. Okay. Last week, the internet exploded with a fairly shocking allegation. President Richard Nixon began America's war on drugs to criminalize Black people and hippies, according to a newly revealed 1994 quote from Nixon domestic policy advisor John Ehrlichman. Maybe that's how it's pronounced. I don't always know either. The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had 2 enemies. The anti-war left, that's like the left wing, the Democrats, and Black people. Ehrlichman told journalist Dan Baum in 1984. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or Blacks, but getting the public to associate hippies with marijuana and Blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. So what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to, annotate 3 pieces of evidence that help the author support their argument. So if I have up here that the argument is Richard Nixon's war on drugs was not necessarily purely motivated by a racist desire to criminalize Black Americans. So the main idea of this article is that it wasn't entirely about race and about racism. However, this argument right here, this quote about how it was the Nixon administration's intention to put Black people in jail for heroin and to put hippies in jail for marijuana, that suggests that it is an explicitly racist policy. So what I did, I highlighted this whole entire section, and I wrote out here, remember you can highlight, hit with 2 fingers, go to comment, click on comment, and a comment will show up. What I wrote is, this quote establishes the point that the author will be arguing against, that the war on drugs was started explicitly to criminalize Black people and hippies. So We can understand that, right? If the title is, "Was Nixon's War on Drugs a Racially Motivated Crusade?" it's a bit more complicated. Then the author is going to be arguing a little bit against the idea that the whole point of the war on drugs was just to criminalize Black people. So the point of this one is it's setting up the argument that he will then argue against. That's the role of this piece, and that's how this piece helps build to what is eventually going to be his main idea. All right, and then if we go down further, we see even more of these. For instance, here, this is in reference to Richard Nixon, former president. It says, "For one, he," that being Richard Nixon, "personally despised drugs to the point that it's not surprising that he would want to rid the world of them." And again, this is going to help our author make their main idea, right? If he wants to argue that the point wasn't racism that led to the war on drugs, but maybe something else, then this point shows that the war on drugs was a little bit motivated just by the fact that Nixon really hated drugs. It wasn't necessarily entirely about disliking Black people. It was partially about just not liking drugs and thinking that they were really bad, right? So that's another point. Dun, dun, dun. But also, one important thing. Read through the whole article. Just because I'm skipping parts to make this video short for you doesn't mean you shouldn't read the whole thing. Because you might miss very key critical things, like right here. I didn't highlight this, but it does say, "There's no doubt Nixon was racist." And that's part of this person's argument as well. So be sure you read the whole thing because you might miss important context if you don't read everything. But let's get to my final annotation. Nixon's drug war was largely a public health crusade. So this quote shows that Nixon's war on drugs was intended to treat drug addiction as a health issue rather than a criminal issue. So if he's being totally racist, which is the point that this author is arguing against, then he would just want to criminalize it, right? But the fact that he did treat it as a public health issue and wanted to get, medical aid and rehabilitation clinics and different policies into helping people who were addicts as opposed to punishing people who were addicts, that maybe shows that the whole thing wasn't entirely designed explicitly around making Black people's lives worse and putting more Black people in prisons. So that is exactly what you're going to be doing for the remaining 3 sections. You're going to be highlighting anything that helps the author support the main idea. And again, the main idea is always up here at the top if you're looking for it. President Richard Nixon's war on drugs was not necessarily purely motivated by a racist desire to criminalize Black Americans. You're also going to be answering questions at the bottom of each section. So, what was the main idea of this article? Again, I just restated the main idea because the main idea is in the first paragraph, but you're going to have different supporting ideas for your paragraphs. Then second question, how does the author support this main idea? And then I just restate what I found in my annotations. The author supports this argument by bringing up 2 points: that Nixon's hatred of drugs may have been more important to the war on drugs than his own racism, and that Nixon originally started the war on drugs as a public health battle rather than a criminal justice battle. So let's scroll. We're going to read this section, do 3 annotations, do your 3 annotations, answer these 2 questions. Read this section, a lot shorter. Highlight 3 pieces of evidence, answer these 2 questions. And you'll have one more, read this section, highlight 3 and annotate 3 things that help the author support their main idea. And then you'll answer these 3 questions. This one actually has 3 because there's something interesting that happens in the final paragraph. So see how authors help build their main idea. You can't just have a main idea and then not support it. You have to support it. See how this author supports their idea. Best of luck. I look forward to seeing your beautiful annotations. I'm sure they will be brilliant. I'm sure you are excellent dissectors of arguments. Thanks, guys. I will see you later on for the rest of the Nearpod. Finish this assignment. There's going to be a couple of reflection questions towards the end of the Nearpod, and then make sure you're reading Girl with All the Gifts. And we have a test coming up on Friday. I will tell you more about that test throughout the week. But in the meantime, happy classwork. Good luck. Bye.